super excited for this one here. Both of those teams, of course, do want to stay in this upper bracket, don't want to fall down into the lower one because it's such a big advantage for that grand final to just win this series here. So everything on the line for Perplex. They need to win this one if they don't want to fall down into the lower bracket. And as we talked about, this is just such a good dungeon for Echo, so it's going to be so hard for Perplex. Both of the teams just gathering up this initial pull onto this first Lantern.
And neither team is using that Elemental Shaman that we've seen some teams opt to use in here. They are both on this Death Knight, Shadow Priest, Fire Mage composition. I actually think this is a cool set of decisions that have been made here, but my favorite thing about these comps is Divine has been doing this all weekend. He's been playing this Necrolord Demon Hunter outside of dungeons where you need that Kyrian, like in Spires, you need it so you can pick up those spears. In here, he's actually playing that Necrolord, so it's a cool little difference. And let's check back in at the end of the dungeon and see what the damage and healing between the two Demon Hunters is going to be like, because I think there's maybe an argument to be made for this Covenant choice on the spec. There's a lot of really cool stuff that it brings to the table with that Fleshcraft, with those demon spawns, and with the Ameni Soulbind tree.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at the time, how they dealt with this first pull, it was so even. I think there was like a half a second that separated those two teams when they finished off that first pull. So incredibly well executed. Looks like Echo is pulling the boss immediately onto this whole first trash pull. This is incredible. So they're using the Ashen Hallow by Sally. They pulled the whole area with the Brute and the boss. And look how fast the boss is dropping. They're also going to be spawning the Pride, if I'm not mistaken, with this Brute here. So I'm not sure if they want to keep it alive to not spawn it, or if they are planning on bursting down the Pride with the boss. I mean, this is an insane strat by Echo just now.
It looks like their damage is being assigned, so these two are going to die right around the same time. This is really cool. That Brute has a lot more health than the other mobs that are near it, so what we've seen teams do is they decide, look, we can just AoE to our heart's content. Because that Brute has so much health, we're not in any danger of accidentally spawning this Pride, right? And then once there's just two mobs left, it's easy enough to focus damage into that one main target there, and you can see perfect timing. The boss goes down and the Pride comes up right at the same time, so Echo is not going to be losing any effective time, and they will now get to single target this Pride. On the other hand, Perplexed are going to come out of this exchange with more count, right? They are pulling trash with boss, and they've already earned their Pride buff. So this is a difference in strategy already, but they are going to be deploying much more damage here because their cooldowns are going to be multiplied with this Pride buff, whereas Echo is going to have those two things sequentially instead.
Yeah, this is actually reverse strategies, because this is what Perplex did in Spires, where they pulled the Pride on top of the bosses and they used their cooldowns to be able to deal with the Pride and then not have the cooldowns for the Pride buff. But Echo is doing it the other way around now. So really interesting to see the reverse kind of positions for both of those teams in those two dungeons. Perplex now finishing off the boss, and they're 6% trash ahead, as you just mentioned. And Echo, though, has the Pride buff. So this is going to be really close between the two teams still, because Echo is going to be dealing with this trash faster because of the Pride, but Perplex has a slight advantage in trash percentage as well. And one thing to note that I just realized is that all of them are actually playing dwarves, either normal dwarves or iron dwarves, except the tanks. The tanks are night elves, of course, because they cannot be dwarves. And the reason why is because we have bursting. So they have those the ratios to get rid of the bursting stacks whenever they need to, on top of also having the master spell from the Shadow Priests.
Yeah, that's such a powerful amount of effects to deal with bursting. That's an affix that can be pretty scary if you have 10 or 11 stacks, which in MDI situations you often do. But the fact that you can just clear them from basically the whole group with those abilities is huge. And you can see Echo are going to be reaching that 33% trash count, killed off that mob. The Pride has expired on them, but they are interested in getting some more damage buff right now. As you can see, now is going to be grabbing a ton of enemies, running back over to this Lantern. Ring of Frost is going to come down to let everything group up except for that Overseer, which of course does not respect crowd control. And they will potentially be opening this Lantern here. Looks like Zaylia is doing that right now. Perplexed doing a different strategy. Instead, they are moving ahead. They didn't pull this trash pull that is in front of the Lantern. Echo pulled this with the last pull because they had that Pride buff. Perplexed unable to do that because they didn't have that Pride buff, and so they are instead going to be pulling some trash right now, and they are fighting in the room here, but a Shine is going to go down right at the start of this pull, and this is a disaster here for Perplexed. Not sure exactly what got him, but they are going to res him up. So they still have or they've used their battle res. They don't have a battle res anymore. Everything else about this pull, though, as long as they can keep those interrupts under control, they should be okay. But the problem is, this is a pull where they run out of interrupts pretty quickly if they don't kill everything fast. And they had 2 players absent for like 5 seconds there, a Shine and whoever was casting battle res on him. That meant that they had a pretty sketchy situation there. They are going to be able to recover, though, and they are fighting this Pride in the corner because they've activated the Lantern on the other side of the wall, so they're actually getting that Lantern buff as long as they're killing mobs right in the corner of this room here. Echo, though, wasting no time. They've already killed their 40% Pride, and they're now moving on into this mini-boss room with 10 stacks of Lantern and with a Pride buff.
Yeah, so both of them did activate that Lantern earlier, but chose to pull different kind of mobs, and it really looked like the amount of time it took Perplex to set up the whole pool really cost them quite a lot. They had to use that Mind Soothe and the CC to go past, needed to wait for the patrol to be in the correct position, and then losing a Shine right at the start really cost them a lot of time. Now both of them are dealing with this mini-boss though, and it looks like Echo is moving to that right side Lantern. I do think they did lose their initial Lantern buff, so they're not going to get a refresh here. They still have the Pride buff up, but the Lantern is quite a long time ago, so I'm pretty sure they have lost that one at this point. We'll see if they're going to be able to roll this Lantern buff throughout the next ring area here until the boss, until Torvald. So we'll see how they deal with the Lanterns, while Perplex is doing something very similar, just making sure they go outside. They're actually dealing with this initial trash back here, the Warden pack, and just gathering up onto the Lantern as well, just like we saw Echo do.
Yeah, these two teams are still neck and neck here. Perplexed have done a good job of recovering from that one death that they had earlier. It hasn't cost them too much, but you can see Echo have pulled ahead a little bit into the lead here. They are now going to be starting on this 60% Pride. They have that Lantern buff as well, and if they can kill this Pride in the next 30 seconds or so, I think they'll be able to refresh their Lantern stacks with it as well. We'll be able to see once that Lantern in the very bottom left of the screen does end up kind of deactivating, as you can see over there. I think it's going to be active for a little while longer, but this is usually a pretty tight timer here, and it can make a big deal. There it goes, it's deactivated. The Lantern is done, so they won't be extending their Lantern buff with this Pride, but they will be getting a Prideful buff, and they can maybe still extend their buffs if they get to the next Lantern really, really quick and kill the little quill feather that is next to it. Here they go, moving over.
So Perplex actually managed to refresh there. So Perplex did deal with this Pride so quickly that they actually managed to get it into that Lantern window still. So slight advantage here for Perplexed, being able to refresh that Lantern buff in the very last second by just killing off that Pride a little bit quicker. So really close between those two teams at this point. Echo, of course, already were a little bit faster with finishing it off, but not being able to refresh that Lantern buff is a slight disadvantage. So let's see how they deal with this pack here, as they have a Sentinel and a Warden here. That's a huge amount of damage on the tank. So Divine Field and now need to make sure that they're going to be fine here to survive, as now doesn't have a cheat death anymore. And Mirrors goes down. They do have a Battle Rest available. Of course, they have the DK, so they had the instant Battle Rest to be able to use. So I don't think that was too big of a damage loss. They really quickly recovered with that DK's Battle Rest. But now we're even on the deaths. We have one death for both teams.
Yeah, I mean, that looked scary for Echo, but you've got to look at the count here. That pull was so much bigger for them than it was for Perplexed, and they have done in one pull what it looks like Perplexed is going to be doing in two separate pulls, and that is a huge advantage for Echo. Even with that death, the fact they were able to make a bigger pull work is the kind of thing that gives you... I mean, this is a series that is often going to come down to a handful of seconds, and doing something one pull faster, that can give you 30 seconds, that can give you a minute at times as well. Perplexed, 76% trash count here. It looks like they are going to be having more count in their ring section here, so they might be able to sneak a little bit of a better routing through the rest of the dungeon as a result of how this has worked out. But look at what they're doing right now. Perplexed is just fighting these two trash mobs kind of by themselves, and this is an extremely inefficient time right now for Perplexed. This is not them doing what they'd like to be doing, whereas Echo are on a boss, and that's something you kind of have to do, right? Fighting bosses by themselves, that's kind of normal. Perplexed, though, they were fighting two trash mobs by themselves for a little while. Now they've opened the gates, pulled some ghouls, and they are going to be fighting this boss with this Remnant and these ghouls. Watch Divine's health here, because even in that meta that you can see him in right now, he is taking a lot of damage.
Yeah, definitely very difficult for Perplexity. One thing to note as well is that both of the teams didn't actually have any sort of buffs for this boss here. No Lantern buff and no Pride buff and no Bloodlust being committed either. So neither of the teams think that they need any buffs for this boss, and they thought that the buffs are actually more important for the trash pulls. So all of the Lantern buffs and the Pride being committed for trash, and the bosses are just being cleaved down with extra trash for Perplex too. We do see we see the difference in trash now with Perplex being they're gonna be above 80% even with the trash that they still have here. I would assume. Actually, no, they're at 79%. Okay, so it's just slightly below that 80% mark. And this last school is gonna be triggering it. So I assume they want to skip it. So they just maybe want to proc it upstairs, use Invispot, and then go downstairs to just completely avoid that Pride. While Echo, on the other hand, just pulled this whole room except one oppressor, and they're also on 79% now. But Perplex can just completely ignore this room. I'm not sure how they're going to be dealing with that, though.
Yeah, this is going to be so interesting because on the one hand, if you're Perplexed, maybe you skip the Pride and then you do an AoE trash pull downstairs onto the boss, and maybe you can still make that happen without the Pride buff. If you can do that, that is probably a huge time save. On the other hand, you could also just kill the Pride, and then you get a big buff that will make that room much safer, if a little bit slower, because you had to spend that time killing the Pride. So that is going to be the question here. Echo, on the other hand, also are going to be spawning an 80% Pride once they're done with the boss. The thing is, it's just the next boss instead. So they will need some more trash in their future. They need that first pull of the hallway, and they might skip this Pride as well and then do that pull if I had to guess. So we'll see here. We'll get an indication of what both teams are up to. It does look like Perplexed are killing their Pride. If Echo can find a way to skip this Pride, that would be something that I think will give them an edge here. I mean, they're already, of course, almost a boss in the lead at this point, although they are behind on that count by the 1% and the Pride it spawns.
Yeah, and Perplex struggling a little bit with this Pride here. Divine proccing his cheap death.
Oh, no.
And having to use the AMZ as well to be able to survive. And the Pride doesn't seem to be dying anytime soon. Everyone wants to save their offensive cooldowns here for that, what I assume is going to be a very big pull in that next room. But the one thing in favor of Perplex is going to be that trash that they can skip later on. Because if they're dealing with this room here on top of the boss, that means that they can skip quite a lot of trash after this boss, while Echo has to play a lot of it. And I'm not sure if Echo intended to play this Pride, but it looks like they were running away, and then they changed their minds and walked back into it. Now it looks like they're just completely cleaving down the Pride with the Oppressor, using that shield to reduce some of the damage incoming here. But the Pride is dying really quickly. They have lots of damage onto the Pride, so it shouldn't be a problem for them to finish it off.
Yeah, I mean, they just killed that Pride so fast with the use of that combustion. Huge damage there into it, and the wings as well. And Frag's cooldowns too. They've done huge damage to this whole pull. But Perplexed on the other screen have just demolished this boss and all of its trash as well. So both teams now at 85% count. They are both ready to skip to the general call Trash Gauntlet. That is the next order of business for Echo. Perplexed almost there as well. They just have to finish off this boss. So something like 30 seconds or so is going to be all of the gap between these two teams. That is enough for Echo if they can make this work. And look at what they're doing. They're going all the way to this lantern. This is so bold. They are going all the way up ahead to the lantern here, and they're going to fight the first two halves or 2/3 of the gauntlet all at once here, opening up the lantern. And once they can kill this, they will be safe because they'll have 50% extra damage and healing. And there it goes. All of those lantern buffs coming out onto the team. And now they get to deal like 20% of General Call's damage. Once she gets to 90%, she'll kind of go invulnerable for a bit and then run close by and now come back out of invulnerability, and they can keep fighting her. There it is. This is really cool. Look for them to potentially be pulling those acolytes in as well at some point. That's something that maybe once Sigil of Silence is back, they'll be looking to pull those in. They did use that Sigil earlier in this pull, I think, so they need to wait a little bit on that cooldown. This is such a huge, huge time save, though, for Echo relative to doing this gauntlet more slowly. And there's the Sigil of Silence coming out. All of these casters are not going to be getting anything done. All of these stacks are going to be refreshed of the Lantern buff as well, and they are zooming through here, but Perplexed also going very big here at the start of their gauntlet too.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, Echo is pretty clearly in the lead because of that difference that we had with the way Perplexed dealt with the trash in the very end of this ring section and with that boss. They did manage to skip that initial trash pull after the third boss, but it didn't make up as much time as they might have hoped. Echo is already already pulling that Sentinel, the Chamber Sentinel, on top of General Call. They're doing this whole gauntlet area in 2 pulls, basically. This is pretty bold by Echo to be able to just deal with all of this after already committing so many cooldowns for this first huge pull. So really well done by them. Now it does have Cheat Death available, but they just got 3 bleed effects on now Fragments and Celia. Did manage to use the shield though to get rid of it as well, and they also used their dwarf racials to help out with those bleed effects. So really, really nice to have those dwarf racials to help them out, not only with bursting, but also with those bleeds that are being applied from General Cal here in this gauntlet area.
They are going to get this gauntlet done so much quicker than Perplexed because they're doing it in one last pull. I mean, they pulled right onto that lantern to get started, and they have made such good use of the lantern extends as a result as well. So they are already now just working on these last 2 Hunt Masters. Once they do that, they'll have their 100% Pride, and once they do that, they just have General Call left, and that'll be the end of the dungeon. So they are really almost done here. There's very little left that stands between them and that upper finals path to the grand finals here, and looks like they are going to be killing this Pride. No designs on skipping it. They are just going to take down the Pride and then have all of their cooldowns with the Prideful buff to just remove General Call from existence in the near future.
Yeah, I mean, this is such a fast and speedy run by Echo and incredibly well executed too. Only this 1 death on the board, which was on Maris in that ring section earlier, didn't cost them too much time as it was at the end of one of their pulls there. So really not too bad on the time for them. While Perplexed is just dealing with this whole, the last section of the dungeon a little bit slower. Up until Torvald, they were pretty at the same speed at the same time in the dungeon, but then Echo just dealt with everything a little bit quicker, and now they're popping this Bloodlust. They have the Pride buff, they have all offensive cooldowns available, and General Call is going to be melting for Echo here.
Yeah, watch that timer near the top of the damage meters there. 24 seconds into the fight so far, and they're already more than halfway done with the boss's health. This boss will die once it reaches 50% HP, and this boss fight is going to be over so fast. And remember, our best time in this dungeon was like an 1840 or something in the last couple days. Echo is going to get this thing done in 17 minutes and 30 seconds. This is a blazing fast time from Echo, and it punches their ticket to our grand finals.
Are you kidding me with that time there?